Hey everybody, happy Friday. Happy Friday. How are you? Ian Hill, coaching session. Set is down. It's the naked set. This should be rated R because it's naked. Hey, first of all, whoever, it was 078824?
Yes.
078824, $50, man. I love it. I haven't made a bet in years, like being back in the casino days.
Yes.
But I'm not getting any points.
Nope.
Grey Cup.
Yep.
Grey Cup. Rough Riders, Tie Cats, TSN, tune in. You know what the problem is? I just had one of those little power drinks, which I shouldn't say, because Gina would say I'm not allowed to eat. I'm not allowed to drink those anymore because the doctor a couple years ago said I wasn't allowed to drink those. But I drank one of those for the first time in a long, long time. So I'm going to talk like this the whole time, really, really fast, because I'm totally wired on whatever. All right, seriously. Hey, okay, we have a lot to do today. We got people in Two Hills. Mayor Henry, how are you? We got people in Pinoca. We got people in Rimby. We got people in Lacombe. My brother from another mother, former counselor Ian, how are you? We got people in Pincher. We got people in, where else? Strathmore Wheatland.
That's right.
Bow Bench Retreat. Come on. Where you at? We got people all over the place. Hannah, you guys are up there in the Learning Center, up in the upper floor. Got to meet some great people just 2 days ago or 3 days ago at the AUMA conference, so the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. And they had a big conference of all the elected officials, and I was invited to talk to all the newly elected officials, which was a good time. So we used that as an excuse to gather all of the 9 regions and invite all the elected officials and others that were participating in this program. And you know what we did? We just had a gathering. We just opened up a door, served free alcohol.
Really?
Put up some food, and you know what? It was supposed to be from 4:30 to 6:30, and at 8 o'clock, I had to say this: get the heck out! I had to tell everybody to leave at 8 o'clock. I think we have a couple pictures of that, right? Throw up a couple of pictures that we had from that gathering of the elected officials there in Calgary. Throw up those. Yeah, there's a couple of people. There's a couple of people from Lethbridge, and there's Terry. Terry, well, we're past that picture. Terry from Strathmore, and then I see Karen there from on the far left from Delburn, the CAO of Delburn, and then I think there's another picture, and people just gathering, man, hanging out, chatting. What's your point of showing this, Ian? You can come back to me now. What's your point of showing this? Meaningful connection with one human being. Community building and community capacity building is about a meaningful connection with one more human being than you had the day before. Meaningful connection with one human being. So all we did was this. We just had a room, no agenda, and brought a bunch of people together. Now, it's true, we had a couple of libations and we had some food. But you know what? There was nothing else. Just gather together. Create an opportunity for like-minded people to gather together. And when you create an opportunity for like-minded people to gather together, special things happen. Quality conversations lead to quality relationships. Quality relationships lead to quality outcomes. And that's an important piece of all of this. Let me remind you, why are we doing this? Because we believe that rural communities are relevant in the 21st century. But if rural communities are to stay relevant, we have to have effective strategies to keep them relevant. We think the key to a rural community staying relevant are both the leadership capacity, community leadership capacity. What does that mean? Leadership excellence of both formal and informal leaders. It is the informal leader that drives the community. Informal leaders in the business community, informal leaders in the social profit community, informal leaders in the faith community. Where informal leadership capacity in the community is high, great things happen. Where informal leadership capacity is low, nothing gets done. There's a lack of alignment. Gina, bring me one of those dry erase board pens, please, into the studio. So the leadership capacity is the key to a rural community thriving today. That's what this program's all about. We're trying to prove, thank you very much. We're trying to prove that when you have high leadership capacity, great things happen, so that rural communities stay relevant. And we picked 9 regions to help us prove that, and that's you. Why are you going through this recap? I don't get it. To remind you the mission that we're on. You and I, we're on a mission. We have over 800 registrants, and we know that there's another 150 or so who are just participating by showing up but didn't create a username and password. So we're probably close to 1,000. We got 1,000 people trying to prove something. Trying to prove that when you make an all-out commitment to the development of a leader, great things happen. And that macro change happens on a micro level, one individual's capacity growing, great things happen. So if I want to build community capacity, I do it one relationship at a time, one relationship at a time. And that's some pictures that you saw. Now, a community has taken that on. They've said, okay, becoming a community builder participants, let's start coming together. Last night in Pincher Creek, about 30 people came together. They just came together for no agenda, no purpose. They're just part of the Becoming a Community Builder program, and so they came together. I think we have a picture or two of that. And so they just came together. I think we have a picture or two of that. There we go. They just came together. They had some chili. They had some coffee. They had some squares and some desserts for no other reason than coming together. How about in your town? How about you gather some people together? Well, how can we do that? You hold an event. We'll send out the invitation. We have everybody's emails. Well, why can't we send them directly? Because you haven't gotten permission. They sent the email to me. I'll ask everybody in the coming weeks if we can share that with their information with the local community. But right now they've only said that we could have their stuff, and we want to be, trust, right? We want to not violate that trust. So you see right there in Pincher, 30 people got together last night for no other reason than to build relationship. Leadership capacity, the individual growing their leadership abilities increases the leadership capacity of the community, which we know is a key to building a thriving community in the 21st century. Community capacity increases when I make a meaningful connection with one more human being than I had the day before. That's community capacity building. What are we doing today? We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to take your questions, of course. We're going to take your questions, of course. And we're going to take your question on Facebook. We're going to take your question on Facebook. We're going to take your question via whatever's next. Just throw up whatever's next. Text or something. Text. Whatever's next. We're going to take your question via text. We're going to take your question in the chat box. And you can email in your question. You see there. Or we can take your question in the chat box. But before we do that, I've got to talk about some things today, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yep.
Jeff's here. There he is. No, that's not Jeff.
There's
Jeff.
I am. Hey, right.
Jeff's here. Hi,
Hey
Jeff.
there. Hey.
Now, who are you taking in the game?
The Rough Riders.
Because
Saskatchewan.
you have family heritage in Saskatchewan.
I do. My grandfather was born in Regina.
In Regina. And
Yep.
farmers, right?
Farmers out of Saskatoon.
Mennonite farmers.
Mennonite farmers up there in the wheat country.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My great-grandfather immigrated. My grandfather was born there.
That's awesome. But the sad thing is, the sad thing is you're going to lose. Anyway.
I got 6 points.
That's right. You do. All right. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about today, before we get to your questions, is this agent of change and the agent of change's ability to improve performance of those that they lead. Now think back to the teaching session. An agent of change understands, demonstrates, and exerts influence through trusting relationship to act as a catalyst for change. That if you were going to be a community builder, the first competency of the community builder was to be able to change something. And I said that I would give you three examples, and corresponding tools to affect change. First, in your community, 100 cups of coffee, expanding your sphere of influence. I know we're going to talk about that after I get done with this coaching thing. And then secondly, how to change the performance of an employee or a volunteer. And then finally, which I'll send you some info next week, how does the agent of change initiate change within a group, a business, an organization, whatever? How do you initiate a change? How do you walk out change within an organization? Those three places, community, organization, individual, the agent of change has a way to change things in all three. A process, a protocol, a system, an approach, a tool in their toolkit. So remember, for me, agent of change isn't just this big picture, charismatic, I know how to change things, I can rally people. It's got to come down to the ground. Do you know how to get one human being performance to improve? Now, why is this important? Because customer service is important. Why is this important? Because operational efficiency is important. Why is this important? Because well-run businesses are important. Why is this important? Because hospitality is important. Why is this important? Because nonprofits being efficient and effective are important. Now, how do all of those things happen? Because employees and volunteers are great at what they do. And the cumulative effect of everything that I just said is you will build a thriving rural community. Well-run businesses, well-run nonprofits, well-run governmental entities are a result of individual employees doing a great job, right, Jeff?
Yep.
I mean, they are a result of individual employees doing a great job. If individual employees don't do a great job in a company, if individual employees don't do a great job in a social profit, if individual, turn off the ringer. If individual, I know people are wanting to ask questions, but just turn off the ringer. If individual employees don't do a great job in a governmental entity, what's the cumulative effect of that? Crappy community. So today, what I'm going to walk you through is, what do I do with poor performance as an agent of change? Because I would suggest to you, you're not an agent of change if you can't help poor performance become standard or above standard performance. You're not an agent of change. If I can't bring it down to the micro level, because if I can't bring it down to the micro level, I'll never have macro change. Does that make sense, Gina and Keith? They're not paying attention. They're playing Angry Birds. They're back there playing Angry Birds. Anyways. No more Monster drinks before the broadcast. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. So I gave you two handouts. I gave you a flow chart and I gave you an always never. The always never we'll get to in a second. Now I know you're going to have questions, but just hold for a second. Let me walk through this thing. First of all, how do I create the preconditions for excellent performance? I'm not going to drill deep into it today because we'll talk about it in systems. When we talk about onboarding employees, a system for integrating an employee to my organization, or onboarding a volunteer. But I have posted two handouts, two resources in the portal. A questionnaire for a new volunteer, an example, and a questionnaire for a new employee. Why? Because in today's user-driven society, I want to head off poor performance at the pass. How do I do that? The way that I do that, the way that I head off poor performance, is I better understand the expectations. Got a little cough going on for Jeff. I understand the expectations of what the employee wants from me. We're in a user-driven society. So when I hire a new employee, I want to know what they expect from my organization. Well, shouldn't I get what they want, what I expect from them? Well, yeah, we'll get to that. But remember, it's user-driven. We talked about that last time we were together. So since it's a user-driven society, let them have a say. Let them talk first. What do you expect from an organization? Who was your best boss? Who was your worst boss? Not their names, but why? Why was that person worst? Why was that person best? Because right from there, I know their expectations. I know how they want to be managed. Same thing as for a volunteer. What would be fulfilling to you? What would be meaningful to you? Those pre-questionnaires, expectation clarifiers of what they want from me, the organization, I've put those examples in. Now we'll talk about them more in depth when we talk about the systems for onboarding an employee, the system for recruiting and retaining a volunteer. With that as a backdrop, that I've understood their expectations, I've given them a chance to talk to me, we now stumble across poor performance. We have a poor performing employee or group of employees who are performing below our performance standards, or so a group or an individual poor performing. Foundational principles before we can attack or drill into or correct the poor performance. One, you're a good doctor. Doctor? Yes, you see, we believe that poor performance comes from 3 root causes. 3 root causes on the individual side, 3 root causes on the group side. That's why we've laid it out as a diagnostic chart so you can follow step by step. The diagnostic chart also ensures consistency. You approach each employee's performance issue the same way. Now, you may not provide medicine to cure the performance issue the same way, but your approach is systematic, which implies consistency, implies fairness. Secondly, we always address the performance issue, not the person. That's why we have those always and nevers that we'll go over in just a second. We always address the performance issue. People have value. People have meaning. People are worth a ton. People, just by being people, are valuable and should be treated as such. I can love you, but not be completely satisfied with your performance and want to take corrective measure. Now, again, why is this important? Because if we don't have individual quality performers in individual companies or individual organizations, then we're not going to have quality performing communities. That's why individual performance and our ability to get the most from a human being is so critical, and creating organizations that can do so, because that creates prosperous communities. Well communities, holistically well communities, business, social, and the like. So, first, I got to be a good doctor. Second, I address people. I address the problem, not the people. I remember that there's 3 root causes, only 3 root causes. 1, people don't know the expectations. 2, people don't have the tools or the training. 3, people think they have a choice. And we'll go into those in just a minute. Now, what's all this called? All this is called coaching. All this is called coaching. And I'm not going to do a big workshop on coaching. All this is called coaching. And here's the simplicity of it. This is what it looks like visually. Coaching is about this. Coaching is, here's where an employee is today, or a volunteer. Here's their potential. That gap, I believe, is the agent of change job. Is the agent of change job. Getting people across that gap. That's coaching. I'm going to coach that person. I'm going to coach that person across the gap between where they're at today and what they could potentially become. Now, why is that important? Because if I can get every person that I'm responsible for leading to be 10% better at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year, think about the impact in my business, or think about the impact in our nonprofit, or think about the impact in our community. If we can get them better, 10% better in their vocation, huge impact. So the gap theory, as you saw in your handout last time, is that I'm going to coach them across the gap. Now, what does coaching mean? Coaching means that it's people intense, people aware, relationship based, guiding somebody across the gap. And this is really important. It changes the dynamic between leader and follower when my only job is to help you reach your full potential. My only job is to help you be your best. My only job is to help you reach your dreams, your aspirations, and your goals. Imagine being a part of an organization where leadership's only responsibility is to help you be your best. That's why that questionnaire is so important. That's why that expectation clarifier is so important. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What do you want to do? Now, give me permission to get you there. Give me permission to help you across the gap. See, in today's day and age, people need to give me permission to lead them. My title, my authority doesn't mean crap to them anymore. But I can influence them if they trust me. This approach that I'm about to walk through with you takes this into consideration and is the most trustworthy approach because it's consistent, it's systematic. People know what to expect, so they can trust it. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Go.
And that trust comes from consistency.
It does.
If you follow a system, this is one of them, but if you follow a system consistently, then people have that trust. They know what's going to happen next.
That's right. And if you start with, and we're not going to talk about it in depth today, we're going to talk about it when we talk about onboarding an employee or onboarding a volunteer and setting them up for success. If you ask them what they want, and then you tell them what you want, and you have a mutual agreement there, it sets up a context that's even stronger, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's say now you've come across poor performance. So all of that is a backdrop. We're coaches, good doctors. We're gonna get people across the gap. We're gonna treat people with dignity and respect. We're gonna address the poor performance, not the person. So we come across poor performance. Look at the flow chart now. When I come across poor performance, the first thing I must ask myself, is it a group? Is everybody doing it wrong? Or is just one or two people doing it wrong? Everybody doing it wrong, one or two people doing it wrong. How many of you ever had this happen? Only one person in the group is doing something wrong, but the email goes out to everybody. Hey everybody, just want you to know that we got to make sure that we do such and such and so, or the memo. And we read that and we go, why in the hell are they sending this to me? I'm doing it right. We all know it's Jane down the road who's doing it wrong, but they send it out to everybody. Why? Because they're chicken. You know what? What do you mean? Well, because they're not willing to take poor performance head on. The good coach is willing to take poor performance head on. The agent of change is willing to take poor performance head on. Instead of addressing the whole group, they will address the individual. Now, why don't most people do that? Because they don't know how. They don't want to deal with that uncomfortableness of the confrontation. That's the whole point of having a tool like this. So let's say that you observe that it's everybody doing it right, that everybody that volunteers at the canteen is turning in the money and we're having mistakes over and over again. Or everybody in the workplace is not following, or we're not getting the results that we want, and everybody's doing it wrong. Okay, that's group poor performance. And that would be on the right side of your flow chart. So let's look at the right side of the flow chart. Now, I would suggest to you that when it's group poor performance, it can only be one of three things. One, the training was bad. We didn't train the group properly. Two, the policy is bad. The policy. The rules that govern us doing it. Three, the procedure is bad. The how we expect them to do it won't get us to the result that we want. It's only one of those three things. Well, how would I evaluate that? Just like a good doctor, I have to have some kind of diagnostic tool. Or you mean I'm going to stick my thermometer on their chest or rub it on the side of it? Well, not thermometer. What the hell is that thing?
Yeah,
stethoscope. That's right. I'm going to stick my stethoscope on their chest, or I'm going to put the thermometer on the side of their head. No. I've got to have some diagnostic tools. The diagnostic tool that I would suggest that you use is one that I introduced to you when we talked about expanding our sphere of influence, the chat. 80% of the listening, 20% of the talking. I do nothing but ask open-ended questions to better understand. You thought that I was being facetious, or maybe even you thought it was trite when I talked to you about listening. But whether it's trying to initiate a community initiative, or whether it's trying to work and improve an individual's performance, the number one thing you can do is listen. Because you can't be a good doctor if you're not listening with your eyes, your ears, and your intuition. So you can really get to the root cause of the problem. How many of you have ever tried to correct performance and you spent 90 days, 6 months trying to identify, and you were trying all kinds of stuff and you couldn't figure it out, and then finally you fired them? That's because you weren't trying to find the root cause of the poor performance. And how do you find the root cause? The chat. 80% listening, 20% talking. I ask open-ended questions to try to get to the root cause. And I make sure that I'm listening with my eyes through observation, listening through my ears by hearing the answers to the open-ended questions, and listening with my intuition. What I know vocationally and operationally about the way things are supposed to be done. All three of those combine to help me to say, I know we put everyone through the training. Let me go check for understanding. So if I wanted to check and see if training had taken hold, I'd check for understanding. Now I could check for understanding by observing, watching them do it. I could check for understanding by asking, hey, tell me, how are we supposed to do this? And I'll know really, really quickly if people have been properly trained. But the training of somebody could mean that I've trained them how to do it wrong. In other words, the policy is bad. Well, I don't understand what you mean by that. Well, when I see group poor performance of volunteers or within my organization, business or governmental entity, I must look at the rules that govern. Oftentimes, we take and create rules because of one bad situation. Right, Jeff? I mean, one bad situation happened, and so we create a whole bunch of rules. And then those whole bunch of rules actually act as an impediment to people meeting our expectations and our objectives. So when I evaluate policy, I sit down and say to myself, is this policy unleashing human capital, or is this policy restricting human capital? Is this policy, when extrapolated out to its logical end, make it easier for people to do things or harder? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have controls. Of course you should have controls, especially when you're handling cash and things like that. But here's an example of what I mean. You own a small restaurant. You want to have a high level of service. And you say to the gal that's the waitress, anytime you serve a hamburger with fries, you're going to bring ketchup, you're going to bring mustard, you're going to bring vinegar for the people that like to put it on their fries, whatever. And so then you told her that's the rule. That's the way it's going to be. And then the ketchup is over there, and the vinegar is way back there, and the mustard's way over there. She's got to run to 3 different places to try to get everything necessary to serve with the hamburger. Is that the employee's fault, or is it you, the leader's fault? It's your fault. Bad policy, here's the rule, and bad procedure. Everything's in a different place. You can also use the term ergonomically correct. If the setup's not ergonomically correct, but we force them to follow the rule, you're not going to have success. Well, how would I diagnose that? Again, utilizing the chat. Remember, when I say you're listening, you're not just listening with your ears, you're also listening with your eyes. Procedure. So the rules are good, but the way we're having them do it, the how is bad. So once I observe training, I'm going to retrain them, and then what do? Check for understanding. I take a corrective measure. I retrain. And then I check to see if performance has improved. You see it right there. It says follow up. So I retrain the group. I follow up. Yep, they're hitting the performance standard. And usually we stop there. But when they hit the performance standard, here's what I should do. Woohoo! I should celebrate. Yes, well done. How many of you have had corrective performance measures taken and nobody ever comes back and checks again? Nobody ever comes back and celebrates the improvement. Okay, Ian, we've retrained and everybody's still doing it wrong. There can only be one of 2 things. That means either the policy is bad or the procedure is bad. So then I'd look at the rules. I'd sit with the group and talk to them about the rules. Do the rules help you do this well, or do the rules restrict you? You know, they're gonna tell you the rules restrict. You know what I find? I find that most people don't get in their car in the morning and say, I want to do a crappy job at work today. Most people don't say that. Most people want it to run efficiently and effectively. So believe and trust people. So tell me, guys, these rules that we follow, are they helping you or are they hurting you? Do they make it easier or do they make it harder? And if you could change the rules, how would you change it to meet this objective easier for you and for those that we serve, or for our internal processes? And you know what? They'll probably give you 2 or 3 ideas. Not today, but when we talk about systems, we'll give you a system for gathering thoughts, ideas, and concerns, prioritizing them, and then picking the best out and implementing them. But for today, suffice it to say, you know who's going to build your best policies? Your people. Your people are going to build your best policies. Why? Because they're vocationally competent. They do it every day. They have knowledge. They have insight. Now take this to a big picture. Don't we as citizens want to have input in our community? Aren't we tired of elected officials just making decisions in closed rooms and then coming and telling us what it's going to be? Yeah, but that's the way, it's a representative style of government, but not if you want to execute community engagement. People want to have a say. Well, your employees and your volunteers want to have a say as well. So if I was going to look at policy, I'd ask them, is it working for you? Okay, we change the policy, we adjust the rules, and we still have poor performance. Then it's the procedure. Then it's the only thing it can be. Then it's the procedure. And in each case, we tweak and follow up. Tweak and follow up. Now, why this systematic approach? Because we cannot let poor performance continue, period. So we're going to be like a pit bull. It's this thing, nope. It's this thing, nope. It's this thing, fixed it. Why can we never let poor performance continue as agents of change and community builders? Because we know the impact. In today's day and age, when someone comes to your community and has a poor experience, they'll tell that story 1,000,000 times. And it'll get retweeted, it'll get reposted, it'll get retold over and over and over again, face to face, virtually, or in the written word. Can you be okay with poor performance? No, you can't. You don't have the luxury of it. You need to get every business in town performing well. You need to get every nonprofit in town, social profit in town, performing well. There must be an all-out commitment to excellence in our organizations and in our community. That means storefronts are clean. That means employees are well-groomed. That means we deliver high levels of service. So that's why we can't walk past poor performance as leaders. Now, do we have to be jerks? No, I already said we separate individual value from poor performance. We never treat anybody without dignity and respect. We always treat people with value and value them with dignity and respect. But we can't tolerate poor performance, period. I used to be in the hospitality industry, helped run a big hotel casino, 3,000 employees. You wouldn't walk into one of our urinals and have it smell. It can't smell. You wouldn't walk through one of our walkways and have paper everywhere. It can't be like that. You know, one time I cleaned everything for 4 city blocks around our property. Seriously, a private company cleaning 4 city blocks. Why? Because you were coming. Every time you come towards us, we wanted you to see it getting cleaner and cleaner as you walk towards our building. Because clean implies excellence. I think communities need to take the same stance. Paint the damn lines every 90 days in downtown. Paint the damn lines. Make it look fresh every 90 days. So that when you walk into our downtown, it looks fresh and clean. A little bit of paint. Oh, we don't have a budget. Well, then every business in town pitch in a little bit of paint. Look at Lacombe. Lacombe with its damn murals. Just voted one of the top places in all of Canada. Lacombe. And I've met those yahoos. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All of the good people at Lacombe. You're brilliant. Why? Because you have a high standard of excellence. So we can't walk past poor performance, group poor performance. All right, now let's go the other way. It's not group poor performance, Ian, it's one person. And I got to be quick here. Because remember I said we were going to 110. We're going to get to your questions in just a second. So group poor performance, handled. Follow the system. Individual poor performance. So we come across, I look at it and I go, everybody except Bob is doing it right. Okay. Now I'm the good doctor. I've got to now go after the root cause, not the surface cause. Like here's one. You need to be on time. You know what the response to that is? No, I need to be on time. You need to be more thorough. Well, yeah. You think saying to a human being, you need to be on time is going to make them on time? No, not today. You think saying to a human being, you need to be more detailed is going to get them to be more detailed? You think saying to the employee, you need to give better service is going to help them give better service? Come on now. That's too simplistic, y'all. You're dumb as a rock if you think that. It's more sophisticated than that, because the root cause of them being late, the root cause of their lack of attention to detail, their root cause of their poor service is what you must address. You can't intimidate anybody anymore. You can't bark at anybody anymore. Hell, you know what? They'll tell you to kiss their butt and they'll go somewhere else for 50 cents to $1, or maybe even 25 cents an hour more. It is definitely an employee's market today in most of Alberta, because they can get a job. Okay, so I've come across individual poor performance. What must I do? I got to diagnose. Is it expectations? Put that up on the screen. The employee doesn't perform because they don't know the expectations. So stop and ask yourself, how have you clarified expectations with your employees? And I don't care if you got one employee. How does your employee know what you expect? Well, they just know. They've been working here long enough. Really? I don't know. Because I hear this a lot. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. Just what we do around here. Well, is just what we do around here what you expect? Or has it just organically grown up and taken hold as of just the way we do it? But is just the way we do it serving your customers well? Is just the way we do it serving your internal organization well? Maybe not. So whether it's written job description, written expectations, or if you're a small organization of just one or two, then it's just look them in the eye and saying, here's what I expect. Expectations. Most of the time when employees don't perform, it's because no one was absolutely clear on expectation. And please don't do this. Whatever you do, please don't do this. Do you understand what I expect? Absolutely. No, that's the open-ended questions. 80% listening, 20% talking, where I say, explain to me how this is supposed to be done. Explain to me how you're going to do it. Well, that's treating somebody very condescending. No, it's not. It's just saying, explain it to me so that we have no misunderstanding. So you and I are on the same page and we don't have a lot of stress. So expectations. Tools or training. They don't have the tools. Now, what do I mean by that? I want you to think about when you're looking at poor performance, just ask yourself, how did I train them to do this? Did I show it to them one or two times and then ask them to do it on their own? How did I train them? Are they trained? Or I might say it this way. Do they have the capacity to do this? You ever notice that in some companies, the lady that they hire to be the receptionist is the most demure person in the world who doesn't want to look anybody in the eye? Or maybe even at an arena. You ever had somebody that's sitting at a front desk at, you go to the Tri-Leisure Center up in Stony Plain, or you go in Leduc and there's a big, huge, battleship of a leisure center. And then oftentimes you walk in and the person at the front desk is quiet and shy and doesn't want to look anybody in the eye because they hired the wrong person for that job. Or do they have the physical tools to do the job? So when I'm evaluating what the root cause might be, I have to ask myself those questions. Did we hire the wrong person? Have we trained them properly? And do they have the physical tools? Now I'm going to stop on those two because I would suggest to you that 85% of poor performance resides there. That's not true. Really, like the wisest business guru of all time, Deming, said that 85% of poor performance rests in a lack of expectations and a lack of training tools or ability. He said it was on management to clarify expectations and provide the training and the tools. Thereby, 85% of poor performance rests in the hands of management. Finally, they think they have a choice. We'll get there in just a second. I've only got a few minutes to cover this, and then we're going to take your questions. So I come across, and I do my chat. I'm a good doctor, and I think, could be expectations. So put up expectations, Keith. Could be expectations. Now, how would I really know that? I just ask. I would just ask the question, Jeff. I would just say to them, hey, tell me what you think we expect. Tell me how you think we should do this. And I just listen. And I'll know within 8 seconds if they're clear on the expectations. Well, if they're not, then I'd clarify the expectations with them, check for understanding. What does that look like? Now explain that to me again. Yep, you got it. Perfect. Then I would allow them to go back and do the performance. And then what would I do? I'd follow up. If they're doing it right, celebrate. Great job, man. Because if they're doing it better today than they were yesterday, celebrate that. What if they're not doing it correct? Well, then it must be training. They were able to tell me. It's one thing for you to tell me how to do it. It's another thing for you to go and do it. So how would I check to see if it was training or tools? I'd go observe. So now I'm listening with my eyes. I'm watching them do it. Oh, that's condescending. Is it? Is it to come and be a coach and help them get across the gap to their full potential? Is it condescending to say, my only job is to help you to get to you be your best? So I'm going to come and support you and watch you and check it all out? And then I find out the reason that you can't do the Excel spreadsheet in a timely manner is because you don't know how to do Excel very well. But you were afraid to admit that. But when I'm sitting next to you, I can give you some tips and I can give you some ideas. And the next thing you know, 10 minutes later, you feel better about yourself because I coached you a little bit. Come on now. Trust. See, it's about you changing your approach and saying, my only job for being here is help you be your best. So let me coach you a little bit. Let me give you a tip. Let me give you a tool. Let me give you an idea. But the only way that I can really execute that is to observe. So if I want to diagnose if it's training or tools, I must observe. I must physically be there with them to watch it go down. And I'll know instantly if they have the physical capacity within themselves. I'll know instantly if they've been trained properly. And I'll know right away if they have the tools to do the job. Okay, so then you retrain or you show them how to do Excel and you follow up. And if they're doing it right, what does it say? Celebrate, good job. What if they're doing it wrong? Well, then it can only be one thing. It can only be one thing, Jeff. It can only be one thing. If you've clarified the expectations, checked for understanding, and they gave you the expectations back to your satisfaction. If you've retrained them and you physically stood there and saw them do it right, and you walked away and they started doing it wrong again, then it can only be one thing. Choice. They think they have a choice. They think they have a choice. Oh, that sounds very harsh. That's harsh. Everything was warm and fuzzy till that end. That's very harsh. It's not harsh. You see, there are some things that employees and volunteers have choices on. Let's take a volunteer. A volunteer might have a choice of how they stock the shelf. A volunteer might have a choice in how they come and go. But the way they turn in money from the canteen on a Saturday night, there is no choice. This is the protocol we follow. 3 people count the money. 2 people verify it. It all goes in the bank bag and gets put in the safe. And then on Monday, so-and-so picks it up and verifies it again and whatever. You don't vary from that. You don't have a choice. Not that we're mean, not that we're bad, not that we're jerks. That's the protocol. No choice. In a company, there's things that employees have choices on. There's things that they don't. We'll use safety. You know, my daughter works for Schlumberger. She's a field engineer out in the patch, getting ready to go do winter projects up in Firebag and the like. Don't you think they have protocols? There's no choice. Safety protocol. It's the way we do it. Vary from that, get fired, period. But on other things, they do have a choice. Well, what I find a lot of times is employees and volunteers get confused with what they have a choice in and what they don't. Now, quickly, if I know it's not expectations, they're clear on the expectations. I've checked for understanding. I've watched them do it. I know they can do it, so they've been properly trained. They have the tools. But every time I walk away, they don't do it anymore. That's when I got to sit down and have a chat. A coaching session. Now, what does that look like? Quickly. And we still got 25 minutes. Remember, going to 10 after. I got to identify the attitudinal barrier. The why. What's an attitudinal barrier? Well, I guess the best way to describe it is this. That's an attitudinal barrier. There's some attitudinal barrier to them doing it, and I got to find out what it is. So that conversation is one-on-one, just me and them. I don't need a whole bunch of other people. I'm going to think about their communication style. See how it all builds? Are they a fact-based communicator? Are they emotion-based communicator? Are they a belief-based communicator? Are they a value-based communicator? And I'm going to adjust my communication style to meet theirs. Next week, I'm going to give you another tool to identify their personality style or leadership style that you can do if you want. And then you'd know a little bit about them. You even know more about them. So when I sit down and talk with them, I'm going to ask myself a couple questions. When's the best place to approach them? When's the best time to approach them? Because I know it could be potentially a contentious conversation. I'm going to think through the conversation and really clarify what I want my desired outcome to be. And then I'm going to sit down and say something like this. Bob, thank you for sitting down and talking with me. As you know, we've had some issues with such and such aspect of performance. Key factor, only use facts, not conjecture. As you know, Bob, each time you've run the canteen, we've been $30 short, anywhere from $20 to $30 short every single time. Something's wrong. Are you saying I'm stealing? I didn't say you're stealing, Bob. I just said every time we're $20 to $30 short. I don't know what's going on. I just know we're $20 to $30 short. Or, Bob, every day for the last 10 weeks, you've been late, 10 minutes late to work. That's a fact. So we're only going to deal in facts because we're not going to make this confrontational. Remember, their poor performance is not an affront to you. So, as I ask open-ended questions, Bob, we went through the retraining. You seem to do it great. You told me when we sat down and talked the first time, everything we expected, and it sure seems like you understand. What I can't figure out is why you're not performing to the standard that we've discussed, that you've explained to me, and I've seen you do in the past. Why do you think, Bob? No, your stream is not frozen. Well, what are you doing? I'm just going to sit and wait. I'm going to sit and wait and let Bob tell me. That uncomfortableness of silence is okay. Because I want Bob to self-diagnose. I don't need to be intimidated by Bob. I'm the leader. I don't need to be freaked out or scared of Bob. I'm the leader. I'm just going to ask Bob, Bob, why do you think you're poorly performing, not meeting this standard? You give me some insight. And I'll let Bob tell me why he thinks before I tell him. And I might not even tell him why I think. I'm just going to let him tell me. And then the next thing I'm going to say to Bob is, I'm going to give him a time frame for improvement. Bob, I need you to improve that, or we need you to improve that within blank. Now, if it's him telling racist, dirty jokes, it's we need you to improve that immediately. If it's some procedure of some kind, we're going to give you 2 weeks to get better at it. The time frame is up to you, based on the urgency of the need for correction. Then I'm going to say this, Bob, what are you going to do different? Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. So I'm going to ask him what he thinks the cause is. I'm going to give him a time frame for improvement, and then mutually he and I are going to build a plan. What are the action steps you're going to take that you're going to do different? I'll try harder. No, that's not good enough. And then the final thing I'm going to ask him is, what do you want my role to be, Bob? How can I support you? So you want to ask him how he's going to improve. So you've told him the preferred behavior. You're going to ask him how he's going to improve. You've set a time frame for the behavior, and then you ask him your role. Finally, consequence. What's going to be the consequence to it not getting better? Well, how am I going to do that in a volunteer situation? It's simple. We love you. We want you to be a volunteer. But if we continue to be $30 short with you heading up the canteen, we just can't have you heading up the canteen anymore. Now, in an employment situation, it might be a different dynamic. It might be moving into progressive discipline if your company is large enough to have that. Or it might just be, hey, you know what? If you continue down this road, you're not going to be able to be with us. If you choose to continue down this road, you choose not to be with us. All right, I've gone 10 minutes longer than I wanted to in this. So either way, you now have a game plan. You have the preferred performance, a time frame for the improvement of the preferred performance. You have their strategy for improving the performance and their commitment to follow it. You have a clarification of your role in the dynamic, and you have consequences. Very well laid out, it's clear. And all of that can be done in an environment of respect. I love you, but I can't have this continue to go on. Now, here's the tough part. The tough part is there's no way that there's enough time to cover this. So next week, I'm going to send you some reminder emails regarding this information. All right, enough. I believe that this is a good system. I believe it works. I've introduced it to you now. I'll reinforce it next week a little bit. All right, I'm sure we got people that want to say something.
Just a couple of questions.
Go.
One question about having good stories told. How do we inspire folks to tweet, write, tell, share the good stories as much as the not so good?
Okay, that's a little far afield from our subject matter.
It's not quite on the
Right.
flow chart.
It's not really focusing on employee performance. However, I think there has to be a proactive system for word of mouth marketing to be effective. Proactive system. We give them tools. We give them ways that they can tell our story. Gladwell said it best. He said sticky. The stories had to be sticky. Viral comes from the term virus, comes from the analogy of infecting people with a virus. Now, we don't have time to walk through it. However, we will walk through it in systems, but let me give you a little piece. Think about how you spread a virus. First of all, you got to have something that's highly contagious. So when you say tell good stories, is the story really any good? Because good service today isn't a good enough story to be told. It has to be legendary service. When we talk about systems, we'll talk about legendary service because it is legendary service. What's a legend? Something that gets repeated over and over again. So your service has to be so great that people tell the story over and over again. It's like the 9-mile apple pie or the 9-inch chocolate cake that's this big, and then you go back and tell all your friends, when I was in Calgary, I was at this restaurant and I had a cake was this big. Or when I was down in the States, I went to Disneyland and the cake was this big. Why? Because that's wow. So it's not enough to, you said good stories. Good stories don't get retold. Crazy, amazing stories get told. Wow people. So first of all, the story must be sticky. Secondly, you must infect that sticky story into carriers, people of influence. Remembering that there's a big difference between people of influence and people of prominence. I've got to make sure that people of influence are telling the good story. So if I want more people to come to my town that have disposable income and fall between the ages of 35 and 45, I got to figure out who people of influence are in the markets that I want to penetrate in that demographic. And then make sure I connect with them on their Facebook page, on their blog, on their whatever. And then wow them with my thing so they'll tell and infect others. They infect others. If you want people to tell your good story, the first thing you better figure out is if your story is any damn good. And it being an average, okay, pretty good story is not enough. For it to get retold, for it to be viral, it better be wow. It better be legendary. When we talk about systems thinking, I'll give you some really tangible ways as an organization and as a community to create legendary stories and have them told over and over and over again. Next.
Oh, that was the one question we've had so far.
What in the hell? Ask a question. So, in the absence of no questions, I want to talk about two things. One, I want to talk about, we discussed expanding your sphere of influence, and I took you a week to talk about expanding your sphere of influence. Identifying those people of influence and then building a trusting relationship with those people of influence. And I got some people sending me emails, which I answered, but I thought some of those questions might be relevant to all of you. One, Ian, I still don't understand the difference between a person of influence and a person of prominence. Let me clarify. We think sometimes that the mayor is the person of influence. And maybe to some degree they are. But are they the person of influence to get done what you need to get done? The person of influence might be the administrative assistant to the CEO. The person of influence might be the executive admin to the CAO, because that's how you're going to get the meeting. The person of influence might be the mom at the school that wields a significant amount of power. In a company, the person of influence may not be the supervisor, but the 20-year employee that everybody walks on eggshells around. So the people of influence is who I need on my team, who I need in alignment. Remember we talked about alignment, who I need in alignment. I know in the conversation in Pincher last night, they talked about the big arrow. How do we determine the big arrow? You know who determines the big arrow? The people with the most influence. Right?
Yep.
I mean, are you kidding me? The people with the most influence decide where the big arrow goes. Oh, you're talking about the power brokers. You're talking about the millionaires. You're talking about the resource company. I don't know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that have built enough trusting relationships or have enough influence, whether they exert that influence with money or they exert that influence in the halls of government. I don't know. Well, you can't combat that, Ian. Really? I see it happening every day. I see it happening every day. When you build enough consensus amongst enough stakeholders, you actually, for the first time in the history of mankind, can move the big arrow. But do you have the skill to do it? And I think the skill to do it is building trusting relationships with people of influence. Hey, make no mistake. This isn't my first rodeo. I'm not walking into a public meeting thinking I'm going to lose. Oh, yeah. I mean, Gina will tell you, we don't lose too many public meetings. I don't think we've ever lost one when we're doing an initiative. Why? Because I've already made sure all the people of influence are in alignment. I've made sure I've gone and talked to them all. Or I've gone and talked to them and identified that they're not on my game. They're not for me. They're not for the thing we want to do. And that's okay, because then I can build a strategy to work through them or around them. Remember, I gave you these tidbits. So, for the person that asked me that question, I want to build trusting relationships with those people that can actually say something and other people do something. And it's not just the guy who's rich or the gal who's the head of the big company or the elected official. A lot of times it's somebody behind the scenes. A lot of times it's the third highest bureaucrat that can make all of it happen. The same is true in business. I know for me, revenue is generated by one or two key players. The masses, I just worry about those one or two key players. Put my time and energy in to build a trusting relationship with the one or two key players. You got anything else for me?
No.
Come on, man, ask a question. You can put it in the chat box. You can put it up on Facebook. You can text it in. And make sure we're refreshing that text. Make sure our cell phone is being refreshed to my internal team so we're getting those questions. Okay, so I told you before we began this Agent of Change thing that I would give you 3 tools to be able to affect change. One in a community, that's that 100 cups of coffee. This performance coaching approach was the second. And then the third was how do you initiate change in an organization? Now, all these subjects are important. And there's so much information that even in 15 weeks we can't cover it. But that's where you get to pick and choose. So next week, I'm going to post a video right in the portal, and I'll remind you in the emails of next week. I'm going to post a video right in the portal that talks to you about how to implement change within an organization. It's much like this, a process, a systematic process for implementing change in an organization. I call it mastering the power of change. I think we have to have, as leaders, we have a moral obligation to be able to initiate change effectively. Have you ever gone through a bad change with an organization? It sucks. So I'm going to give you that mastering the power of change. Now for some of you, it'll be incredibly relevant because you run a hospital or you run a small business or you run a nonprofit and you're about to initiate some change. So I encourage you, the video is about 27, 28 minutes or something like that. Watch it. Watch it. Why? Because it'll be a solid tool for you. In addition, I'm going to give you another tool next week that I'm just going to post on the website. And if it's relevant to you, utilize it. Called Understanding Your Leadership Style. It'll give you an opportunity to have an exercise that will help bring people within your organization into alignment. The theory being that if this arrow understands this arrow a little bit better, they're more likely to get into alignment. So this Understanding Your Leadership Style, I helped develop through a program called ACE, the Provincial-Wide Initiative. And we developed that to give people a tool so you can use it. And I would encourage you, even if you're newly, like in Ponoka, the newly elected officials, do this exercise together. Any new council and new counselors, do this exercise together. New nonprofit board, do this exercise together. I'll give you a video that explains the exercise, I'll give you tips for doing the exercise, and I'll give you the materials to do the exercise. And what's the point of it? I better understand your style of doing things. You better understand my style of doing things. We have a greater likelihood of alignment. The bottom line is, hold on, Jeff. The bottom line is the agent of change knows how to initiate successfully change in a community, knows how to successfully initiate change in an organization, and knows how to effectively initiate change within a human being. Go, Jeff.
Okay.
And we have 9 minutes, because I said we were going till 10 after.
Okay, a couple of questions that are kind of related to each other, and they deal with persons of influence. Are there any concrete signs, actions, etc., that we can look for to identify those people of influence, and how do we know who is influential? So.
Really? Seriously? Really? Do you come on now, common sense. I'm not being disparaging, and I think the Monster drink is starting to fall off, so I got Gina's looking at me going, don't go there, Ian. Just follow me, okay? If a person says something and people do stuff, they're a person of influence. If a person says something and they all think it's a joke, they're not a people of influence. So a person of influence would be identified if I see that what they post on Facebook, people respond to. Or when they say to everybody, show up at this meeting and people come. Or they have the ability to say, I'm raising money for this and people give. They have credibility, they have believability, and they've gained trust of people. Or because of their business holdings, or because of what they've done for others in the past, or their track record of success, they have influence. So those are the telltale signs I'm looking for. On the surface, when they say something, do people act? When they write something, are people moved? When they ask for something, do people give? That would tell me if they're a person of influence amongst a certain stakeholder group. Deeper than that, I'm looking for, are they believable? Are they credible? Do they have a track record of success? Those are people of influence. Now remember, a person of influence could be somebody negative. They are able to influence a dynamic negatively. I'm probably going to want to go have a cup of coffee with them as well. Because if I can build a trusting relationship with the curmudgeon, if I can build a trusting relationship with the gadfly that all they do is just spew out crap, if I can build a trusting relationship with the cynic and the crusty, jaded individual, think about the victory that is, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah.
Now remember, when I say trusting relationship, I don't mean they agree with my ideology. They just trust that I'll do what I say I'm going to do. And I trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. Alignment. We can't just hang around people that think like us. We can't just hang around people that have our ideology. We can't just hang around people that go where we go, eat what we eat, listen to what we listen to. That's not building community capacity. Building community capacity is my ability to build a trusting relationship, a bridge between people who don't look like me, smell like me, talk like me. Did I answer that better, Gina? Are you satisfied with that? You gotta always check with the big boss. Remember now, Gina's the big boss. You say, who's Gina? Gina Hill, the Minister of Finance. Jim Flaherty's not the Minister of Finance. Gina Hill's the Minister of Finance. Stephen Harper's not the Prime Minister. Gina Hill's the Prime Minister. She runs the show. Look at her. She just gave me the thumbs up. She's like, that's right. Go, Jeff.
Well, I was thinking about, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how I would go about finding some of those people if I'm new to town, or if I'm just getting started on this whole process. And it seems to me that something like finding out what projects have been done, what has been done in the past, and digging into who was behind that might help me find those persons of influence.
You know, another way to do it if I was new in town is just say this, is as I get to know people in my neighborhood, I just say stuff like this. Who in town has to be on board for something to get done? That's a person of influence. You know who I ask? But obviously this is not applicable in a rural community.
Okay.
You know who I always ask? Cab drivers.
Oh.
In big communities. I just ask cab drivers. You know who else you can ask? The principal of the elementary school. Because they know. You know who else you can ask? The senior who's been around town for a long time and is the retiree from this board and that board and whatever. They know. And in just some casual conversations, if you are effectively, what is it?
Listening.
If you are effectively listening with your ears, your eyes, you'll know who the people of influence are. And remember, it's people of influence in the various sectors and various silos. Now, I have to be honest with you, I thought that we would get a lot of questions on this flow chart. I did, of poor performance. But maybe you guys just thought it wasn't relevant. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have an effective way of improving individual performance of employees or volunteers, how's your community going to be a better place? If each individual business doesn't get more effective or efficient or more profitable, if each individual nonprofit doesn't get more efficient at doing their work, and if the governmental entity isn't more effective, well, all of that boils down to individual performance. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Go, Jeff.
Actually,
we got 3 minutes.
The next question actually was about our flow chart here.
Hit me.
Okay. As an employee...
Go Ticats! Go ahead.
Go Rough Riders. As an employee or just a friend of the company, seeing that one person might not be performing or showing up late or whatever, how do we go to the big boss or how do we go to their boss and suggest that these new ways might be a better way to deal with that? How do we coach the coach?
Got it. Good point. First of all, and somebody asked me a similar question I answered via email. Remember this, and it was an economic development officer actually in one of the communities. Remember this, nobody's going to change unless they feel comfortable changing. Change is risky. So when you go to somebody and say, hey, I think you should try this new approach. Well, the first thing is going to be, no, I don't have time. I don't have time to learn a new approach. Or if I learn a new approach and it fails, I look like a fool. Or if I try your new thing, I might be ridiculed. So one of the toughest challenges of getting someone to try something new is you've got to ask yourself, what could be the stumbling block? What would be the fear, the doubt, or the whatever? So when I want to try to get somebody to try something new, the first thing I say to myself is, what will be the barrier, or what could be the barrier in my experience with them that would stumble them in trying something new? Fear, lack of skill, lack of perceived time or energy. What is it going to be? And then I craft my messaging to show them how it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Isn't that funny? It's going to be okay. Yeah. It's going to be okay. You're not going to get ridiculed. It's going to be okay. Trust me, this works. Let me give you some examples. It's going to be okay. And you know what? You can even take that to a bigger community level. Why does this stakeholder group not want to change? What are they afraid of? What are they reluctant? Where have they been burned in the past? Because that's where the objection is going to come from. Now, back to your specific question. What I would do is I would go to that individual and I would ask them, what's your pain? Oh, Bob, man, he is a pain. You know what? I just heard this new thing and this new approach that I think might work with Bob. Ah, to hell with it. I ain't got time for it. Okay. It doesn't hurt bad enough for that person to want to change. So I leave it alone. When it hurts bad enough, they'll be open to hearing the change. If I have a deep enough trusting relationship with that person of influence, they'll be open. How do I build a trusting relationship with the boss? Do my job great. If I do my job great, I have influence with the boss. The boss will listen to me if I do my job great. Over a period of time, if I get known within my organization for being great at what I do, I will have an opportunity to speak into the life of the boss because they will trust my performance. Remember, believable, credible, and a track record of success, that's a person of influence. And I'll be a person of influence with the boss if I'm believable, credible, and I have a track record of success. And that allows me to say to the boss, I think we should use a different approach with Bob. And I've got some ideas. And then you can share this, or you can share the video, or you can share the emails that'll go out next week. Next week, you're going to get 3 emails. Sorry. Because we're going to talk about this. Blips, 3, 4, 5-minute blips, but I got to reinforce this, because if you don't know how to coach poor performance, we're doomed. We're doomed. Why? Because it is in the cumulative impact of individual performance that makes a great organization. And it is the cumulative impact of all organizations that make a great community. So great community comes from individual performance, period. Go, Jeff.
Nope, that was
Got
it.
1 minute. We have 1 minute?
Nope.
We have no minutes.
No minutes.
Okay, always never, always never, always never. You want to get better at coaching people? Read the always never for the next 5 days, every day next week. Always treat people with respect. Always respect each person as an individual. Always respect each person's abilities. Always treat all employees with dignity. Always listen to all employees' complaints, suggestions, and problems. Always take action and request when you say you will. Always take I and you out of conversation. Always understand that employees' achievements are also your achievements, and so on. Never criticize and counsel in front of others. Never criticize the person. Never discuss employee problems with other subordinates. Never start or encourage rumors, and so on. Drill this into you. Make it a part of your being, so you will be what? Trustworthy. See, when you make this a part of your being, you're trustworthy, which makes the coaching a lot easier. So they trust you and they trust the process. They're more open to changing their behavior. Thank you, thank you, thank you for staying 10 minutes, 11 minutes long. Thank you, thank you, thank you for committing to better yourself, so you in turn can go and better your community, for the 4-year-old little boy, for the senior on a fixed income, for the young family, and for the generation to come. And thank you for committing yourself to an idea that rural communities are relevant, and coming up with some solutions to keep them relevant by building Alberta, rural Alberta, 1 leader at a time. See you later.